Hello everyone, welcome to the Grow Your Future podcast. I am Zah and I'm joined by Sam, the man.
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
How are you, Sam?
I'm alright, man. I'm alright.
I love that shirt.
Well, thank you. I like yours too.
Navy looks really good on you.
It is a new one.
Really brings out your complexion.
It's very, my complexion is quite pink because it's a very hot shirt. It's very thick.
Heating up.
It's very thick, so if I start sweating, it's not the vigorous conversation, it's probably just the heat in the body.
How has your week been in the world of accounting and property?
Insane. I don't know how your week went, but mine was insane. Always helping people. It just never, and I think what happens is the more people you help, the more people they tell, and more people need your help. And you just fucking, it's
a referral system.
Referral, and it gets to the point where you're overrun. And when you start fixing people's problems like you do, the problems get bigger and all that kind of stuff, and you're left with lots of things to do.
It's hard to take on new business, right, Sam? Because you're so well known at solving people's problems through accounting and their property needs.
Yes.
And what happens is that the word gets out, everybody wants to utilize your services, but there's only one Sam, right? And this leads us into the topic of conversation today, and this is going to be for the freeloaders out there who I guess can't get access to us because they can't afford it, or they just want to go and do it themselves. And you know what, like there are so many people out there that just want to do it themselves, right? They don't want to approach us for our services because they might think, we might be too expensive, which we are, it might be out of their league or whatever it is, right? Some people are just too intimidated to approach us, or they're just haters and they just don't want to do it.
Another one you're missing, proud. They're too proud to ask.
Proud. That's another one.
We see it a lot,
They've got too much pride.
They can't take an answer from someone that might do the right thing. They want to do the right thing.
They want to do it themselves. And we've all met these people where they just want to do it themselves. So this podcast is for them. These secrets are going to be exposed. This is actually what we do and use here at Luxland. And you know what? It'll work. And what we've broken it down into, we've called it the 10 commandments of property investing, right? And we've broken it down into 10 sections. And if you can tick the box on from 1 to 10 on whatever deal you're looking for, then you can basically guarantee success. So a lot of people will be saying, Zah, you're mad for giving away all of your secrets. But you know what? So many people are going to do it on their own anyway. Or so many people are just not going to do anything at all, right? But a lot of people want to go and do it on their own. And I want to give that value to them. But, for the very few that want to utilize us, then I know that you guys will come and knock on our door.
I still think at the end of the day, even though you'll expose some of the tricks and things you look at when you're looking at property, at the end of the day, people that want to utilize your service and actually get into things that the normal guy can't, because that's one of your sort of value propositions, is a lot of stuff that you'll get clients into isn't actually available to the normal person. So
no, it's actually very hard to do.
It's very hard.
However, it's not impossible, right? And, we talked about it during the week that if, someone wanted to go and do this on their own, it is quite hard. It still is quite hard. However, you know what? Give it a crack. That's our advice. Give it a crack. See how you go, and let's dive into it. And what you're going to realise, if you're an avid listener of this podcast, we may repeat ourselves, and you would have heard a lot of these things before. But try and do these things in particular order so that you can really start ticking off the list. And if one of them fails, you can go back to the top again. So let's start with number 1, Sam.
Number 1, probably a very cliched saying in property: location, location, location.
So, how do we identify a good location?
Through my various sessions with yourself and lots of other clients, I have seen you use various types of service providers to help you assess that. One of which I know is microburbs. So what happens with microburbs?
Microburbs is a website, and all of these tools that we're talking about today are all free, right? Or mostly free. I think RP Data might be might be one that you have to pay for, but microburbs.com.au is a website that scores a suburb, and you can pull so much cool data from this thing. Like, you can see how much money is in the area. It scores everything out of 10. So it'll have an affluence score, which is probably one of the most important. It'll have a lifestyle score. Maybe it might be 8, 9 out of 10. That's a good place to live. There's also like a family score. Is it good for families, or is it just good for young couples, or that type of thing, professionals? So you can identify all of those things. So it's sort of matching up. What is it that you're investing in, and then going, okay, is the demographic going to be there to support the asset's growth? One of the scores which is being really emphasised in late is the tranquility score.
Wow, tranquility.
So tranquility is like wellness, right? Which is quite big at the moment. You need things like green space, that type of amenity nearby, because especially with COVID, people are wanting that sort of that escape, from their neighbourhoods, or within their neighbourhood. So all of these scores are really, really important, and you just want it to try and stack up the best way possible, and that can give you a really good indication of the location.
Okay, so that narrowed down, say, the suburb level. So I guess when you've identified an area, you could go into suburb level and then see which is the best suburb, which that software or provider would help you do. How would you, in terms of a larger location, states and stuff like that, just touching on it, how would you identify what state or larger area before you get into the microburb?
Well, we're going to go to number 4, which is stage of the cycle, and we'll I guess go into the states a little bit more there.
Yep.
I guess the states is, you got to know which state you're going into, right? And then you've got to go, okay, that's the macro market.
Yep.
Then the micro market, hence the reason it's microburbs, right, is where you go. So most people know if they're going to invest in Queensland or New South Wales or Victoria. And those are the 3 states that we focus on, right? So in Victoria, if you go, okay, I want to invest in Victoria, then you've got to go, okay, let's have a look at some locations that we want to sort of specialise in. And I guess the first tick of approval needs to be, does it score well? Right? So, have a play around with it. A really good exercise is go to a really shitty suburb, right? And I'm not going to name one because I don't want to
hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But go to a shitty suburb that you know about. And we all know really bad suburbs, right? In terms of, socio-demographics, right? But type that suburb in. And then go and type in a suburb like Dover Heights or Rose Bay or Drummoyne, something flashy, right? And see the difference. And then have a play with it, have a look where you grew up, have a look at just random suburbs that you've driven past and you've wondered, is there money in that area, or, is there a high tranquility score, whichever one that you're wondering about. Have a play around with it and you'll get a good feel for, where suburbs sit on that score level.
Well, I think that's very important, and why you would think it's very important. A lot of people these days are investing outside their local area. We're investing interstate a lot, right? So we don't know too much on the ground level. You might know a suburb is good, but you don't really know the numbers behind it. So I think if anyone's investing interstate, particularly, or away from home, very crucial tool. You can get sort of knowledge from the area without going there.
And this is the beauty of this tool, right? Like, a lot of our competitors are going to be very angry with us for revealing these secrets, because a lot of our competitors, what they do is they actually get their clients into really bad products. Like, there's a lot of property investment firms out there that just push really bad locations and really bad types of properties because there's an abundance of that type of stock. These companies need to hit target, so they're just, the end consumer really pays for it, right? Now, what I would suggest, if you're going to another property investment firm, use these tools so that you can see that they're, you never know, the firm might be recommending you something killer. Like, it could be so good, right? But you really want to understand, like, hey, I'm educated on this. I get it. I know why I'm investing into this property and into this suburb. So these tools are essential for anyone that's investing in property. And it's all free.
So due diligence. So even though you're getting advice from someone, we always go home and look up stuff. Yep. So if we have a tool there that can read through some of the things other people are saying, then it's a good thing.
The power of the internet.
That's it.
Use it. So let's move on to number 2. Builder/developer. We've talked about this a lot on our previous podcast. It is very important. A lot of people go cheap on builds.
Yep.
They go cheap on... they're trying to get a bargain. Like I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and he was thinking about buying this apartment in Liverpool, and he apparently got a discount of $100,000 from $600 to $500K.
20%. Oh, that's more than 20%. Yeah,
it's a big discount. It's attractive, right? Like on face value, you go, man, that guy's an idiot if he doesn't buy it, right? But it's a shit property.
Why is it being discounted? Because no one wanted to buy it.
Great developers and builders don't discount their properties. It's like when you go to Louis Vuitton, they never have their stuff on sale. It's very, very high quality. So I like to deal with developers that don't put their stuff on sale. I like to deal with developers that charge high prices, because I would rather pay a higher price now and then hold that asset for 10, 20, 30 years. Which one are you going to be more proud of owning? The apartment in Liverpool that you saved, 50, 100 grand on, or, the apartment in Rose Bay that you've made, 2, 3, 4 million on. You just look at the difference, right? So people have got to think long term. And to me, if I'm going to hold an asset forever, I want it to be built by the best that guarantee their work. So, how do we do that, right? Well, it's not that hard to find out who the good developers are. It's not that hard to find out who the great builders are. They're the best in the country. They've got the track record. They've got the big brands, right? We've got to think about it. Really, really big brands, they've got too much to lose. They can't deliver you a shit product.
The big names. So if they have a bad name, you'd know about it. Really.
Yeah, let's not. We won't. I guess name any names as examples, but it's not that hard to do your research and find out who the best developers are in the country. I think one of the tips that I would give you is that if you do come across a builder, find someone that gives you a lifetime guarantee or longer than the 6-year standard structural guarantee. So maybe a 10, 15-year guarantee or 25-year. I work with builders that offer lifetime guarantees. Those guys know that they're going to be around for a long time. They're basically going to be around forever. So if you deal with a builder that's not going to do the runner, he's got to be around forever and he's got to make those guarantees. But you can be sure you're going to get a good product.
Yeah, I had an example with an ex-colleague who dealt with a developer that was only in business for a couple of years, and they ended up folding. So purely the short time frame that company existed hurt him badly, because they folded, did some bad development work, and he paid the price. So
why did he buy that property in the first place?
It was in where was it? Upper North Shore, near the water. It was
good location.
Good location.
So he ticked number 1.
So okay, if we're looking at the fundamentals, he had the good location, but the developer wasn't sound, and it really hurt him financially a lot, actually. To the point where he couldn't sleep and very stressed about the money and expense he had to use of his own to fix problems the developer made. So it's a very crucial one.
Big lesson. Expensive lesson.
Big lesson, and something you can avoid by just spending time talking to people. I think one of your, I've been dealing with you for a long time, is that you have good relationships with some of these big developers and have access to things before they even come available, which is another type of insider thing, where if you're dealing with people in the property space, you get access to these developers, and things that go very quickly, you can get into them. Whereas if you're not in a property space dealing with people in property, you're not going to have that access.
Look, it's like anything you deal with where there's a finite supply, you got to know people, right? And it's just like my watch guy, right? Like he has access to really good exclusive stock, and he's just my go-to guy. I just use him. I pay him a premium, and he just goes and gets it for me. He's got the relationships. It's very much the same in our industry.
That's right.
We have access to the best stock. There's not much of it. It's a very limited supply. So, it does come down to contacts, because, a lot of these great developers, they they can't develop every property, right? Like they've only got so much they can do. So it's really, really important to identify what's what and then go and put your money there. 100%. Number 3, supply and demand. Yes. We always talk about supply and demand.
Another very important
The law of
one.
economics.
It's been around for a long time. It's very poignant in a lot of areas. So obviously a fundamental. And what types of service providers do you use to try and assess supply and demand type situations?
RP data, which you just told me before the podcast what the RP stands for.
I had to look it up. Rich property data.
Wow.
So I'm assuming it has a lot of data.
I love that name. That's awesome. So CoreLogic's RP data is something that, us guys in the industry use a lot to get valuation estimates, recently comparable sales. A lot of this stuff you can sort of get from realestate.com as well. So if you don't want to pay that membership fee, because RP data I think cost me $300-400 a month. Okay. Right? Yep. But I use it every day, right? But the average punter, for the freeloaders out there, use realestate.com. You can pretty much get what you need. You just got to do a little bit of extra work. Yep. But you can pull things like days on market, so how long it takes to sell a property. So if it only takes 16 days to sell a property from marketing it to going unconditional, what that tells us about that, I guess, suburb is that it's in high demand. There's a lack of supply, because if there was an oversupply, it'd be 100 plus days on market. Another really good tool we use is this website called SQM Research, and we're just debating on what it actually stands for, and I actually have no idea.
Did we get clarity?
Statistical Quantitative Market Research, is that what it is? I think I just made that up. But anyway,
sounds good.
sqmresearch.com.au, you can pull so much cool stuff from there. And when it comes to supply and demand, one of the best things you can look for is vacancy rates.
Vacancy rates.
Vacancy rates. So if our vacancy rates are, say, at a 3% level, that's healthy, right? Right now, the markets that we are investing in are at 2% and under. So it's extremely low. I think there was one market we were investing in and it was like 0.2%. Wow. It was basically no properties on the market for rent, which means that there's a high demand, right? People want to live there. So supply and demand is really, really important, but there are some simple things you can use to really gauge how much of that supply and demand is in that area. There is another tool you can use, which we haven't signed up for, but it's I think it's called dsr.com.au, and it actually gives you a supply and demand sort of meter on each suburb. Okay. Yeah, so it's actually quite interesting. So there are tools to really do specific supply and demands, but you can do it on your own through a lot of the free tools. But it's important. You don't want to be buying in a high supply market in a low demand area.
Because what I was going to say, so that last one was DSR.
DSR.com.au, I think.
So they summarise it and actually give you a supply demand.
It's like a score.
Like a picture.
So it's almost like microburb, so it gives you a score. Yeah. But this is a supply and demand score of, I think, I think it gives you a range of owner occupiers compared to renters and all of that sort of thing. I'm quite new to it. I've only just found out about it, but it's quite interesting.
Because all I was going to say is the other two, RP data and SQM research, they're more or less data collection, right? And then it's up to you to then assess what that means. Is that what you experience through those?
I guess software? That's why people take it to the next step and come and see us, right? Because what we do is we do all of this stuff in front of our clients, and what we do is we pull it apart.
Derive
and we discuss
meaning
it.
from it. You have to get the
we
meaning.
Discuss it. Yeah. It's not like, okay, this is the number, this is the percentages, go off on your merry way, it's a great property. It's like, no, this is the reason why. This is why the vacancy rates are at this, 2%, right? This is why days on market is only 22, because there's just no stock, right? And we start looking into, okay, what type of stock, median house prices, all of that sort of stuff. So, we explain why we're investing into that market, because we really need to know, right? We want our clients and our viewers and our listeners to really be confident when they put that pen to paper. Like, you don't want to question it and go, you know what, I'm just doing it because I love Sam or I love Zah, right? It's like, it's not enough. Like, the numbers don't lie. Get to know the numbers, and these are the tools to get there.
It's one thing getting the data, you just have to analyze it, make sense of it, and then you're on a good path.
And what you guys will see from this podcast, there's just so many different things that you've got to do. And that's, I guess, why we've got a business, right? But it is possible to do on your own. So number 4 is stage of the cycle.
So
you
that's the
touched
macro.
on this earlier.
So that's the macro.
You touched on this earlier.
So I guess when you're looking at stage of the cycle, you're really trying to narrow down from any possibility to a certain market, really. And in property, it's really about regions and states and things like that, I would say. So at the stage of cycle, there'd be tools you'd be using as part of your research to identify what's the actual area that you should be investing in. What type of service provider do you use in that front?
So we use Heron Todd White.
Yep.
So they're a company, they're a valuation firm, and they produce a monthly report. So herontoddwhite.com.au, right? They produce a monthly report on residential and also commercial. Obviously, we're more interested in the commercial, and they'll tell you about where each area is in its stage, and they'll write. It's literally like 50 pages. It's so long.
Really?
Yeah, once a month. It is very helpful, and because they're a valuation company. So they're probably one of the biggest valuation companies in Australia, right? So what they do is they go out and they value properties. And then what they're doing is they're collecting that data and they record that data so they can see the trends. They know what up-to-date valuations are coming back in from the previous month. So what you can gather from that is you can see where the market is heading, right? And what they do is they tell you, this is where Brisbane's at.
Yep.
This is where Melbourne's at.
Yep.
This is where Brisbane houses are,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And they'll have a very, very detailed report on, each micro market within that city as well, right? It's very interesting, and everybody should have a read of it. It's really, really cool.
Do they purely use the valuations as part of or do they use, say, other data as part of?
That's actually a good question. I'm unsure. I'm unsure, and I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I think the majority of their data would come from their valuations because they do so many of them. And it also comes from comparable sales. Yeah. So, comparable sales, because the valuers themselves, when they go to a property, they will value it on the property, obviously, itself, but also on comparable sales, right? So comparable sales would obviously be pulled from, could be RP data or realestate.com. So I think it's a variety of things that are giving them that indication of where markets are going. But it's a really good way of seeing, okay, am I investing in a location where it's at the right stage of the cycle?
Yep.
So generally speaking, you sort of know which stages are really good for you to invest in before you go into all of this. But it's good to get that reconfirmation, is that what you say? Reaffirmation, right? That you're actually investing into the right market in the right cycle. So right now, detached housing in Brisbane, going bananas.
Yeah.
It's crazy, apartments and townhouses in Melbourne, also great because the yields are there. So, you want to know, you want to back that up, right, with really solid data.
Similar like microburbs, the Heron Todd White reports would be very helpful for interstate investors because, again, we don't know much about that area, but that would be very, very insightful.
Look, I'm an expert on Melbourne and Brisbane now because we've invested heavily into those markets. I've got a lot of my personal money there. I've got a lot of my clients investing in those areas, so I have to know it pretty much better than Sydney, right? But I never started like that. Like I never started as an expert in interstate. I was actually quite scared of investing in interstate when I first started. And, I invested so heavily in New South Wales because I was just so comfortable. And I knew that if I wanted to grow, I had to go interstate. So I wish I had this podcast, back, 10 years ago to tell me, Zah, follow all of these things. Yeah. And I just didn't know. But now, it's at our fingertips, right?
Yeah. And it's all data-based. Property investing is all about numbers, so the more information, the better. So, number 5. What's number 5?
Yield.
Yield, another fundamental. And to derive meaning from some reports that we get from RP Data, realestate.com is another one. We're really looking at those service providers to get some information to see what's happening with yields. Typically, it is a very important item that we're looking at.
But Sam, everything has a yield.
Yep.
Everything has a yield, right? Like Sydney houses have yields, right? But the problem is, I think the yield might be too low. So where this commandment comes in is we need to shoot for some sort of yield that's going to give us a return. So here at Luxland, we try and hit 4 to 5%, and that's generally a really good yield on a property, right? If we can get a really good location and achieve a 4 to 5% yield, that's, mate, game over. It's a great investment, right? Obviously, we've got to tick all of the other things as well. But how do we find out that we're going to achieve that yield, right? And RP Data, you can actually see the average yield for the location, but also you can see what's on the market for rent. And you can also see from SQM Research, our good friends are there, you can get the implied rental yield for over the last, say, 10 years of a location, which is very, very helpful, Sam, because then you can go, you know what? For the last 10 years, this location has returned a 4.5% yield for houses. Doesn't really look like it would change that much for the next 10 years, right? So you can be quite confident that you're going to get those yields. So if a property spruiker, as we call them, is out there telling you, yeah, you can get a 5-6% yield, have a look at the data and see if it backs it up. I had one of my clients the other day say to me, Zah, I'm really nervous that if I do this particular house and land, it's not going to give the projected rental income. And I said to him, okay, let's just jump on the internet and use these tools. We went on realestate.com, had a look at the comparable rents in the area, and it was smack bang on our predictions. We had, or our appraisal, shall I say. We went on RP Data. It showed us, 4.3% yield average for the suburb. Then we went on SQM Research, and the implied yield was for the last 10 years, 4.2, 4.3%. So, it backed up everything that I was saying about this property, and the client just said, you know what? There's nothing more I can... The numbers don't lie. You're actually not pulling wool over my eyes. You're not just saying it's a great property. You're actually showing me the evidence that it's going to work. And this is the thing. This is all at your fingertips.
Yeah, and as part of your presentations with clients, going through that just instills the confidence. So I guess if you're dealing with someone that's not going through a lot of the data, there might be a reason why they're not, because the data might not be good. So if they're not telling you too much about the property, go do your due diligence yourself with some of these service providers and see what's actually happening.
And that's why we call it the 10 commandments. You have to do it. 10 out of 10 needs to be ticked off. This is the problem. A lot of these other firms, what they'll do is they might just tick off 2 or 3 of them, and they'll emphasize on each and every one of those, and they'll conveniently forget about the others, and what will happen is that you'll be sold the dream and potentially have bought the wrong asset. So it's really important to go through every single one, and it is a bit of a process, but it's one of the biggest financial decisions you're going to make in your life, right? It's very fucking important.
There's a saying, measure twice, cut once.
I've never heard that before.
You haven't heard that?
No, but that's a really good saying.
So spend more time going through the decision-making process before you pull the trigger.
That's like a classic Sam saying, isn't it?
I'm full of them, man. I'm full of them.
So what was it again?
Measure twice.
Measure twice.
Cut once.
Yeah, right.
So you don't fuck it up.
Sounds like an accounting.
It's an accountant's thing.
Accounting thing, huh? Measure it 10 times before you do anything.
That's why we charge so much. Next one. Speaking of accounting, tax breaks.
Wow. I think number 6 is your favourite.
Well, to be honest, when I'm dealing with clients, in the property space from a tax point of view, half the time they don't care about the property, which I have to remind them, no, you have to care about the property. They just care about the tax break it gives them. I'm like,
they love it.
You're not in it
but
for a tax break, but it's a good
But
component.
if we can get it goes back to number 5, yield, right? So if we get this golden gift from the government, they reward us for building and supplying housing, right? And basically, after you do your tax return and you claim that depreciation, you basically add 1 or 2% to your yield.
Yep.
So if you're yielding, say, 4% from an investment property, and you've bought brand new, and you go through that whole depreciation schedule process, you've added 1 or 2%. So you've turned your investment into a 5 to 6% yield return. So you want to get that.
Yeah.
Right? You really want to take advantage of that if you can.
Well, it is a good draw card to property, but I would say, like we always tell clients, purchasing the correct property is the first thing. But if it's brand new and you're able to take advantage of heightened depreciation through brand new properties, it's only going to help in your servicing and the income coming back to you. So 1% is usually coming back as a refund, tax refund. So if we're trying to claw back some of the tax we're paying, it's probably the only way to do it is depreciation through brand new property.
So for the freeloaders again out there who want to do this on their own, how do they take advantage of these tax breaks? Do they just tell their accountant, or what do they do?
They can, or usually we'd prefer, some clients don't want to spend the money on a, what are they called again? Quantity surveyor or a depreciation expert. They do cost not much money, about $500 or so, to get a report written up. Sometimes they try and get the accountant to do it for free, right? But we don't know everything about the building. But
that's a one-off cost, Sam, right?
One-off cost.
Like we actually include it in our fee, and we provide that for our clients. But for you guys out there who want to do it yourself, get the depreciation schedule from someone like Duo Tax. That's who we use. We use Duo Tax. Tuan from Duo Tax is a legend, and he does all of our depreciation schedules. And those depreciation schedules then go to my accountant or our client's accountant, and what you'll do is you include that into their tax returns, and that's a one-off cost that you can use for, 40 years, Sam?
40 years.
So it's a long time, so you can keep claiming that every year.
That's right. So it's a report full of deductions for the years moving forward, and it's going to help your tax situation.
So we'll do a quick example. A house and land that we recently built for a client, his depreciation report in the first year showed that he could claim $30,000 in depreciation.
30 grand.
It's a lot of money.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. So think about what that does to your yield, we don't know what his refund would be because everyone's an individual, but let's say he got 10 grand in refund back. That's an extra $200 a week. That's a big plus for your yield, It's an extra 1 to 2% dependent on the asset that you've bought. So you want to take advantage of that where you can. Number 7, price.
Price, very important one. What you really don't want to be doing is overpaying.
Well, you could tick all of these, right? All to number 6, and then be buying a $2 million asset in a $800,000 suburb, right?
Yeah. So
and you could be overpaying.
So it is a very important thing. I have heard other people say, probably not in the property market, it's more in the share market, but it is quite relevant, is that you make money on the purchase, not on the sale. So you're really trying to find the good deal, the good property.
Make money when you buy.
When you buy.
Yeah.
So it applies the same to property. So you don't want to be going into a suburb and buying the best property in the suburb. You want to probably go in the mediocre level or something along those lines, so you're not overpaying for that area. Because you don't want to be losing money at the back end.
So a lot of people use the median house price as a guide, but I actually think that it's probably not the best indication. It's a good indication, but it's not the best, because let's say something does sell for $2 million in an $800,000 suburb, then all of a sudden the median is going to be put out of whack, right? And it's not a true measure of where that suburb sits. And likewise, if something sells for $200,000, then it's going to really pull it down. So what I like to use is a per square metre rate of replacement costs. And I guess that sometimes is quite hard because, I know it because, we're in the construction game. Yeah. But, like if you can, for example, in Brisbane, like we want to get our builds in, between, dependent on finishes, but $1,500 to $1,800 per square metre, right? Like you get a general idea of what your replacement costs are going to be, and at the moment it's fluctuating because prices are going up. But you get a fair idea. So if you can calculate on that, then you can probably judge what you're paying, whether it's a good deal or not.
Yeah. So that would be quite difficult for someone not in the game to try and derive that square metre rate. That would be quite...
Yeah, I think it could be quite complex, but it really just comes down to studying your comparables, seeing what else is in the market. And look, the median house price, I think, use it as a guide only.
Yeah.
Don't treat it as to the dollar. That's your measuring stick.
Well, with all of these fundamentals and commandments we're going through, they all should complement each other. So you don't rely on one. So it's just a building of evidence, right, for that one purchase. So
it's a combined effort, right? It's a combined effort of all of these 10 commandments. So it's not the one thing. Because this is the thing. When we get these newbie investors come into this office, and what they do is they go, "Hey Zah, I thought Campsie is a good place to invest in." And it's like, okay, Campsie might be a great location. I don't know. We don't know about that location, but let's say it is, right? What about the rest? The Campsie might score 10 out of 10, but what about the other 9 commandments, right? You can't just focus on the one.
Yep, agreed. Number 8.
Number 8's an interesting one, and not many people really think about it. But it's about choosing something that's going to be timeless. So, it is quite difficult to do, but you've got to think about it. We're in the business of buy and hold, an accumulation of assets and holding them forever. So if you're going to hold it forever, don't you think that you want something that's going to be timeless? That could be in design, that could be in build, and that could be in just quality alone. Like, you want something that's not going to be, number one, capital intensive in the future, but you also want something that's going to look and feel great for a tenant or resale value in 30, 40 years' time. Before COVID struck, I went to Japan in Tokyo, and some of the best architects in the world come from Japan. And you look at some of the buildings there, and I was walking down the street thinking some of these buildings were like only 5, 10 years old. And these things are like 30, 40 years old, right? And they just have stood the test of time. And I'm like, wow, if I bought an apartment here, like, I would be proud to own this for the rest of my life. And I would pass it on to my kids, my grandkids, and so on. And it's like those Art Deco apartments out here in the eastern suburbs. They've been there for, over 100 years. They're not going to go anywhere for the next 100 years. They've been designed beautifully, and they've been restored, and you would be proud to own something like that. And I've got property like that in my portfolio. And that's the type of stuff where you're compelled to hold for a very long time, rather than the shit property that sort of looks like it's about to fall apart in a really bad suburb.
And you have to spend money on to keep going, right? I find this one actually very important, timeless design. It sort of delves onto the developer a little bit as well, because if you're dealing with a good developer, they usually would have a good design behind them. And what you're really doing there is getting a bit of an X factor for your property, so it can get a bit more demand over time. People want to live in that or buy that off you down the track. They won't want the cookie cutter stuff. So if you're looking to maybe outperform markets and things, maybe getting something that stands out, something that people like, even if it's an X factor within the building itself, having like an attic sort of room and things like that, it's going to help with the value over time, having something that is unique. Timeless.
And I think people think too short term, Sam, and they think about the deal in front of them and how much of a discount they can get, and that's it. And then once they sign the contract, happy days. But they don't think 10, 15, 20 years ahead when, where's the demand going to be? The timeless stuff, like, we know there's not, an abundance of that type of stock around. So when we do see those opportunities, we jump on them because we just know that, man, I'm going to be proud to own that piece of real estate for the rest of my life. And I can tell you, out of, I think there's 2 million property investors in Australia. not many of them will actually say, wow, like I really love my property portfolio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the goal that I have, is to produce property portfolios for people where they're so proud to own them, right? Like I don't really need to buy my own home to live in, because I get that fix from every single investment that I make. And it's beautiful. Every single experience is so good, right? Picking the right fixture and fittings, picking the right developer and the right materials to go into that property, making it last a lifetime, because I want to leave a legacy with this portfolio. And if you start thinking like that, you'll always buy quality.
Yeah. Number 9.
Number 9, amenity.
Very important one. I think as investors, particularly, we are a business really. We're providing a product to someone, a customer. And what customers usually want is some sort of convenience, something looking after them. If they can choose between a building or a property that has a lot of conveniences for them, they'll choose that over something else. So amenity in terms of an investment, I think is very important. You're going to get or attract a lot more tenants than perhaps other complexes or houses. So if you do focus on amenity or have some sort of amenity attraction, you should do all right.
I think it comes down to lifestyle now, Sam, especially with COVID that's just hit us, right? We've all been locked in, you know, gyms have been shut and all of that sort of thing, and people just went mental, right? And I know I did, right? It was a struggle. So a lot of people now are going, okay, I want to live in an apartment block that has great facilities. You know, it has a gym, it has a pool, it has somewhere I can escape to. Like we recently invested into an apartment block that has co-working spaces. It has, you know, an area for kids. It's got a cinema,
private dining,
and you know, a lot of people get turned off this sort of stuff because they strata fees. But you pass that strata fee back on to the tenant, who will pay a higher price to live there, right? And I know I live in an apartment now that has fantastic facilities, and I pay a higher rent. I pay a premium to be there. Yep. So, you know, this is really important now, that those old, you know, 1970, 1980, you know, apartment blocks that have absolutely nothing to offer. Yes, it saves the landlord some sort of strata cost, but the tenant is genuinely going to be unhappy there, right? Like I would be. So amenity is very important. And I think, you know, it just doesn't stop at apartments. Yep. It also, you know, when it comes to neighbourhoods, right? Yep. You want to be in a neighbourhood where you've got access to green space, especially with COVID, where you're allowed to, when you were locked down, right? You're allowed to go 1 hour to go and exercise and go for walks and all of that sort of stuff. You want to have access to green space and parks. Like that's really, really important. That's important for mental health, right? You know, we've always tried to get properties that have been really close to parks, because you want that escape, right? So amenity in the neighbourhood, public transport, all of that type of stuff, like you said, convenience, Sam, is very important. If you're in the sticks, right, I'm not going to pay a premium to live in that property.
Let's put it this, why do you live where you live right now?
Convenience.
Because you have shopping very close by, you've got a gym in the building, it's close to work and transport hubs. So why not?
The shopping centre where Coles is actually is next door to my apartment building. And you know, I'll tell you a funny story, Sam. We've lived next door to a shopping village for over 10 years now. We have become so used to it. It's literally just 70 metres down the road.
Wow.
When it rains, believe it or not, we drive the car to the car park to the shopping village, right? It's actually a day out for us, but it's only 70 metres down the road. But it's super convenient for us. It allows us to, you know, get on with our life, you know. Think of the big stuff. We don't have to go, oh, we've got to do our monthly shop today like we used to do back in the day, right? Like we just buy when we need, you know, and it's so easy. We don't have to plan dinners or anything like that. We've got restaurants downstairs. You know, there's plenty of Ubers in the area. Like, so if we need to get anywhere, we're 5 minutes from everything. It's just super convenient. And we pay a premium to live there, right? But it allows us to do a lot of other things in our life. So you think of your own life, I think, and then see, okay, how much convenience do I have? And how much would I pay if I had the money for convenience?
You'll always get people paying for convenience. So I think if as part of your decision-making process through all these points, you'd have to have some sort of amenity. Whether it's internal to the property or within the region, you have to have something.
So we need to tick that off the list. The last one is the most important, and I think people really forget how important it is because they focus so much on the property, they focus so much on the investing that they forget about themselves.
Yeah.
So number 10 is you as the investor.
At the end of the day, everyone's different. Everyone's going to have a different set of circumstances, money, savings, job, income, all that kind of stuff. And not everyone's property purchase is going to be the same. And you really have to work out what your goal you're trying to achieve and then work backwards. Work out the goal and then pick the property that suits that goal. It's what we usually do with our client meetings is find out what they need, what they want, what their goals are, and then address them.
So how do you find out what's right for you as an asset, right, Sam? How do you, for our listeners, for our freeloaders at home, how do you find out that this particular, you've ticked 1 to 9 off the list, but how do you figure out if it's right for you, right? Well, I've got some unfortunate news for you. You will have to come and see us, right? Because that's what we're trained to do.
True.
We're trained to identify people's personal situations and match up investments that suit them and their situation. So, obviously you can do it on your own, and you just got to do a lot of research within yourself and, figure out what your goals and objectives are, what your future plans are, where you're at in your financial career, really, in your financial position at that point in time. But everybody's different, Sam, isn't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why it's so tailored, and you have to come and speak to some people to help you.
Yeah. And we're here for you guys. We really do want to help you, even if it's just a phone call. Look, we won't charge you for a phone call, but get in touch with us, right? Like it's really important to get a third, fourth, fifth opinion, because, like we said earlier, it is the biggest financial decision of your life. You want to get it right.
Measure twice, cut once.
I love that saying. I love that saying. Sam, thanks so much, my fellow pilgrim. Mate, well, I'm sure that our listeners have really enjoyed it and taken a lot of value away from this one. So that's it, guys. 1 to 10 commandments. We will see you next time.
See you guys.